All right, what is going on? What is going on? We are back here with another settings video. Today I'm doing a video on the infamous Assassin's Creed Valhalla. The reason why I'm doing this video is because I have spent days upon days trying to get the settings of this game proper to where I can run over 60 frames per second when I want to and keep it locked pretty much for the most part at 60 frames. I've watched numerous videos. I can't even tell you, countless benchmarks myself to try to get these settings correct. Probably one of the most helpful videos was the Digital Foundry video, which I'll have linked inside the description below. And they helped me out a little bit, but even they couldn't seem to figure out what setting is going to benefit you the most in this particular game, and they were trying to get it to run almost as good as PS5. Just to give you a rundown of what I am running on my PC, as you can see from the right lower corner, I do have an RTX 2080 Ti FTW Ultra Edition, so running a high frame rate is not going to be any problem, or in theory it should not be any problem. But as we all know, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a very poor optimized game for PC right now, and they really need to come out with a patch in order to correct that. So until we get the patch, I just want to go over a couple of the settings that I use that help me get a high frame rate in the game and keep it from going down to the 50s and the 40s. I am running on a 1440p monitor. I do have FreeSync enabled, and let's get into some of these options. So if you look at the options here, just to give you a rundown, in the basic, I've got full screen 1440p. I have my monitor refresh rate set at 120 hertz as opposed to 140, but I have that set for a different reason. I might cover that in a different video. VSync is currently off, and a resolution scaler I have set to 90. I'm going to get back to that setting in a second. So moving over to the graphics setting, now you see I have it set to custom. I have adaptive quality set to off. I've tried having this on, off, etc, etc. It really doesn't do much. What it's supposed to do is keep the frame rate locked at a 60 by modifying the resolution to keep it at 60. Does it work? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So I keep it off. Anti-aliasing. Normally in an everyday game, what this setting here is supposed to do is supposed to fix the jagged edges inside games and make it so they're not so blurred out, so on and so forth. What it does in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, from my understanding from the Digital Foundry video, is that this acts as its own resolution scaler. That's what it's supposed to do in theory. Does it actually do that? No. This setting also has a huge impact on frame rate. If you set this to high, even if you have some of the other settings to medium or high using a high-end graphics card like the 2080 Ti, you are going to suffer frame rate drop. I can't explain it. Digital Foundry can't seem to explain it. It seems to me that this feature itself is broken. What I did notice is that setting it to low, you don't have any type of visual impairment, so there's no difference in the resolution that you're looking at. I can't notice any blurs, and I'm playing, again, 27-inch monitor, 1440p. So set this to low. World details. This setting here is basically going to modify the world detail from a distance. So what that means is you're going to get a lot of pop-in if you have this set lower. It does not really have a huge performance impact that I notice on this particular card. It may differ on your particular card if you're using a 2080 or a 2070 or a 2060. Generally speaking, I would keep this on ultra high. When you're up close to objects, you're not going to see any difference in resolution. It's only when you're far away, hence the texture pop in when you are far away, and you can see when you're going towards an object, especially grassy areas, trees, it's going to pop in. So leave this at very high, at ultra high. Clutter, another one, leave this at, I have it set to very high, just for the simple fact that it does not create a huge performance hit, but it also does impact frame rate very ever so slightly. So just leave this at very high. Shadows, there's absolutely no difference that you can tell between very high and ultra. When you're playing the game and you're moving around the screen, you're not going to be able to tell the difference between very high and ultra high. I've had it on very high, I've had it on ultra high. When I'm sitting still, can you see a slight difference? Absolutely. But when you're actually moving, it's not even worth the compromise you're going to get for the performance hit that you're going to see. So again, it's not the card, it's not your computer. If you're running a decent PC, decent gaming PC with decent hardware, don't run around and think that, oh my god, I got to get a 3080 or a 3090 because this game is just running my graphics card through the mill. Because honestly, that's what I was thinking at first also. It's not the case. It is the game being poorly optimized. So it's now our job to go in and optimize the settings ourselves to get the best frame rate available that we want to play at. With that being said, volumetric clouds. This was a huge impact in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It is not the same in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. This does not really affect frame rate all that much. You're not going to get a huge performance hit. You are going to get a very bad graphical hit or resolution hit when you are setting this to anything below high. If you set it to medium, the image of the clouds change drastically. If you set it to very high, there's a slight difference in the complexity of the clouds. And if you set it to ultra high, again, that complexity increases. But is it really noticeable? Are you going to be looking at the sky all the time? Probably not. So I set this to high. Water, always leave this to high because let's just be real, water in Assassin's Creed just looks amazing. So let's keep it on high. Screen place reflections, let's keep that on as well. Nothing to do with that. Now, environmental textures. This was a setting I was playing with quite a bit, trying to figure out what it did, how big of a performance impact it had. Now, when you set this to high, you're going to see that your memory is going to increase. So it's going to use a lot more VRAM. Don't get nervous because, oh, I have an 11 gigabyte card, so I'm not going to care. If you have an 8 gigabyte card, 6 gigabyte card, 6 gigabyte card and on 2060, you probably want to keep this on medium. But if you're running anything like a 2070, 2080, 2080 Super, or a 2080 Ti, or a 3080, keep it on high, because you do notice a difference when you're walking around, when you're climbing, whether it be buildings, mountains, with the texture, anything below high. If it's set to medium, yeah, you're gonna increase your frame rate, increase FPS, but it's not worth the performance hit, or not worth the graphical hit and resolutions you're going to take. So keep this on high. Character textures, keep it on high. Post-processing, this is another one. In Assassin's Creed Odyssey, did not really affect frame rate that much. In Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it definitely does. So when you have this on high, you're going to notice that the frame rate will drop off a little bit. I have it set to low. Personally, I don't really care to see objects blur when they're in front of me or in a distance. I like to keep everything kind of as crisp as I can get it, so I keep that low. Sometimes I even turn it off. Really, it's personal preference, but just don't go any higher than low if you're trying to achieve a higher frame rate. Motion blur, nobody likes motion blur. Most games do it pretty poor, so I keep motion blur off, and that's just kind of what I do for most of my games. Now, everybody was probably looking at, if you're running at 1440p and you have a 2080 Ti, why is your resolution scale at 90 and not 100? Because this bad boy right here is where all the problems are occurring. If this is set to 100, you are going to drop frame rate every time you see a cinematic, every time you get into a very crowded area. It's going to drop. It's probably going to drop below 60. Why? I don't know. Because everything in theory says that you have a 2080 Ti or a 2080 Super or a 2070. You should be able to run this game at 60 frames on 1440p with no problem, with pretty much the settings the way I have them. It is not the case with Valhalla, because Valhalla, again, is poorly optimized. So I have tested this at 100%, I have tested it at 90, and I have tested it at 80. Anything below 80%, you are going to see a graphical hit on the screen. Textures are going to look muddy and blurry. 80% to 90%, there is absolutely no difference unless you're zooming in on the picture to try to take a photo or what have you. Honestly, there's no difference between 100% and 90%. While you're playing the game, you cannot tell the difference. But putting it at 90% gives you one hell of an increased frame rate. So I'm going to show you what that looks like in a second. I'm just going to take off make sure the FPS limit is off, which it is. And I am also going to switch for 1 second and take off the frame cap I have inside the Reba tuner. The reason why I did that is because I was testing out something while I was recording for something else. So let me put that to record higher frame rate. Alright, so we are back. I made that adjustment. So now you might notice that my FPS on the lower right hand corner is at 144%. My GPU usage is at 57%. What I did was also, what you might want to do, you can do it if you want, you don't have to do it if you don't want. It's totally up to you. It's user preference in this case. But what I did was I went into the video control panel, I went into maximum frame rate under 3D settings, and I changed the maximum frame rate to the refresh rate of the actual monitor. Why did I do that? Because if you are running a game, and this is just my personal theory, if you have that uncapped and you run a benchmark, you might notice when you run benchmarks that the frame rate will go above your actual refresh rate, which puts more stress on the card. It adds more heat to the card. So put the NVIDIA control panel maximum refresh rate at the refresh rate of the monitor. This way it doesn't try to exceed the refresh rate of your monitor, in turn not causing more stress on the actual card, not causing more heat to build up on the card, and it's not pushing the frame rate past the boundary that it's not meant to go by. That's just my personal theory. So with all that BS aside and everything else, let's get to why we came here in the first place. So let's show a benchmark. I'm going to run the benchmark live so you guys can see it. Try to pay attention to the bottom right hand corner of the screen. You can also pay attention to the benchmark itself. The benchmark might be a little lower, just for the simple fact that I'm recording while I'm doing the benchmark, so it is putting some extra tension on the GPU. But when you're not recording, you're playing the game, you are going to get a higher refresh rate than if you had the settings different than what I showed you here. So let's take a look. Again, not taking anything away from Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It is a great game so far. I've played every single Assassin's Creed. I have beat every single Assassin's Creed, so I was excited for this game. So, as you can see down the lower right hand corner of the screen, I am pretty much staying within the 70, mid to high 70 frame rate. It is dropping a little lower, down to low 70, 72. In that crowded area, it usually drops down like right around here and then picks right back up when it comes around this right hand bend going down the trail toward the riverbed or the dock, as you want to say. But again, notice I am hitting a steady 75, 80 frames per second with the settings that I have. And you cannot tell a visual difference between 100% resolution and 90% resolution. You can even drop it down to 80% resolution if you choose to. It's totally up to you, but just don't go lower than 80%. I would say if you're playing at 1080p, anything bigger than a 27-inch monitor, you're probably going to notice a hit because the pixels themselves are expanded to cover the extra space. But notice I'm at 83, 82, 80, and then once it actually ends, you'll see that my average frame rate should be close to 80, if not a little bit over 80. And that's basically what we're trying to accomplish, getting it over 60, so when it does dip, it doesn't dip below 60 and the game runs as smooth as possible. So the benchmark is coming to a close, and as you can see, the average frame rate is at 80, minimum is at 44, maximum is 136. Your 1% lows are at 58 FPS. That's a win-win in my book. So definitely, if you have any questions, hit me up in the comments down below. I'm available all the time. I'm always checking the comments. I respond to almost everybody. I try to anyway. If I don't respond to you, don't take it personal. I do work during the day, so I do this in my spare time and when I'm home. Again, if you have any questions, hit down comments. Don't forget to hit that like button. And yeah, if you need anything else, any help, you want any other, setting videos on how I set up certain games, definitely let me know down in the comments as well, and I'll try to post those videos as soon as possible. And thanks for coming out. Thanks for watching, and be easy.